The Dune films directed by Denis Villeneuve are among the most compelling sci-fi stories in recent years. Adapted from Frank Herbert's original novels, they revolve around a deceptively simple idea: fate versus free will, but explore it in a way that completely dismantles one of fiction's oldest tropes, the chosen one. And this is done through the journey of the lead character, Paul Atreides. Welcome everyone, this is The Milestoner, and today I am here to take a deep look at Paul Atreides and discuss how exactly he breaks through the archetype of the chosen one. Now, I will only be talking about the two Dune films and not the books, but I will be going into detail regarding Paul's story in the films. So if you haven't watched them, here's a spoiler alert. Now, the chosen one has been a storytelling trope that has existed for years. A figure marked by prophecy, gifted with power, destined to rise and save the world. You have your Harry Potter, Neo, John Connor, Aang, all of whom are typical chosen ones with some heroic destiny to fulfill. And as such, they have a path that they go on. Paul Atreides begins his story in very much the same way. He's the heir to House Atreides, trained in combat, politics, and discipline, your typical main character. But what truly sets him apart are his Bene Gesserit abilities, which are inherited from his mother, Lady Jessica. These include heightened awareness and, more importantly, glimpses into the future. And here, Dune plants the seeds of something twisted. Because Paul isn't naturally chosen, he is the result of centuries of genetic manipulation. The Bene Gesserit have been carefully controlling bloodlines to create the Kwisatz Haderach, a being who can access all ancestral memory across both genders and see through time with the power of prescience. Someone they can guide and ultimately control. When Paul survives the Gom Jabbar test, he proves he is more than human in their eyes. But what scares them isn't just his power, it's the fact that he may be beyond their control. When House Atreides moves to Arrakis, Paul's visions intensify. He sees fragments of war, death, and the Fremen, and soon these visions begin to materialize. His father, Duke Leto Atreides, is betrayed by the Harkonnens and the Emperor, and House Atreides falls. Paul and Jessica are left alone in the desert. At this point, the story feels like a classic revenge arc, the fallen prince who will rise again and take back his empire. But Dune is not interested in that story. Stranded in the deserts of Arrakis, Paul is exposed to the spice. Being exposed to it in such high doses unlocks Paul's clairvoyant abilities, and he begins seeing future consequences. A galaxy-wide holy war, billions dead in his name. And for the first time, Paul is afraid of his own destiny. And then we meet the Fremen. Throughout the film, Paul has only seen visions of them. They are the people he is supposed to lead to paradise. To them, he may be the al-gaib, a messianic figure planted into their culture by the Bene Gesserit centuries ago so that one day someone like Paul could exploit it. Which means that Paul is not stepping into any destiny. He is just stepping into a system designed to make him look like destiny, like a savior. However, this is also where Paul first understands that the future he has seen is just a possibility, when the person who was supposed to be his friend in the future is killed by him in a duel. Although the film ends on a note which suggests that Paul is the chosen one who is going to lead the Fremen to paradise while also taking back his father's throne, the reality is far from it, and this is only understood in Dune Part 2. Paul actively rejects his role throughout the first half of the film. He wants to live as a Fremen, not rule them. He takes the name Muad'Dib, trying to carve out an identity separate from the prophecy. And through the character of Chani, we see the emotional core of his choice. Because Chani represents something Paul is slowly losing: freedom. She does not believe in the prophecy. She does not believe in the al-gaib. She believes in people. And that's why she's so important. Because she sees Paul not as a god, but as a man. But the world around Paul does not let him stay that man. Stilgar's faith in Paul grows stronger by the day. The Fremen begin to worship him. And it is here, however, that Jessica also begins influencing his path. She drinks the water of life while she is pregnant and sees the path to the future. Her daughter Alia in her womb gains sentience and begins talking to her, and Jessica begins pushing Paul towards his destiny. This is also where we realize that Paul does not have his own free will in the story, no matter how hard he tries. His destiny has been pre-written and he has to follow that. While more and more people see him perform feats and start believing in the al-gaib, he still actively tries to defy his fate. But this all changes when he himself drinks the water of life. this is where Paul truly becomes the Kwisatz Haderach. His mind completely opens up. Time is no longer linear for him. He sees branching futures, countless possibilities, all converging towards a few inevitable outcomes. He sees countless futures and within them just a narrow path to victory. But that path comes at a cost. War, bloodshed, a religious crusade in his name. And here lies the tragedy of Paul Atreides. He does not choose between good and evil. He has to choose between outcomes, all of which are terrible. So Paul embraces his role not because he believes it, but because he believes there is no alternative. He begins manipulating the Fremen's fate and accepts the title of Messiah. He becomes a Lisan al-gaib. Having seen his true heritage as a Harkonnen, he finally decides to act and wages war on both the Harkonnens and the Emperor, finally ready to take back his empire, having seen that this is the path he must follow. He is trying to forge his own path, not knowing that this was what was always written for him. With the Fremen religiously following him and his father's entire nuclear arsenal at his disposal, Paul wages war on the Emperor's forces. The battle ends with the death of the Harkonnens and the Emperor having to submit to Paul's rule. On the surface, this is a victory, but it is just the beginning of something far worse. Because when the great houses threaten to invade Arrakis and refuse to accept Paul's rule, he orders Stelgar and the Fremen to attack them. And this is what begins the Holy War. The Holy War he once feared begins because of him. And this is where Paul completely breaks through the Chosen One archetype. Because traditionally the Chosen One is supposed to save the world and protect people. Paul wages a jihad that will inevitably lead to thousands if not millions of deaths. He starts off as a young prince possessing unique abilities and a destiny laid out for him. However, what sets him on a completely different path is the fact that he has no free will. The Bene Gesserit have long influenced events so that everything occurs according to their plans. No matter what decision Paul makes, his fate is never in his hand. He sees visions of the future and tries to avoid following the golden path of death and destruction. But eventually he ends up on it. However, he is still making the decisions. And what makes Paul so compelling is the tension at the heart of his character. On one hand, he is trapped by forces beyond his control, genetic manipulation, political schemes, and prophecy. On the other hand, he is still making choices. He chooses to lead, he chooses to fight. He chooses to embrace the role of Messiah, even after knowing what it will lead to. Paul was always going to be a messianic figure for the Fremen, but his path to paradise would result in the death of thousands of people. He does not have a heroic path to power where he wins back his empire because he essentially becomes the villain of the story. Paul Atreides is not a hero in the traditional sense. He is a warning, a deconstruction of the very idea of a chosen one, that a single powerful individual can save the world. Because in Dune, that very idea becomes dangerous. Characters like Anakin Skywalker, Eren Yeager are all directly, indirectly inspired from Paul Atreides. Because his story proves that just because you are the chosen one does not mean that you are the hero of the story. Do tell me your thoughts on what you think about the Dune films and especially Paul Atreides as a character. I find his story to be extremely interesting and I want to see where they go with him in Dune 3. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. And if you liked the video, do like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.